Hello and Merry Christmas. I'm actually taping this on Sunday, December the 28th. I flew in last night from a 2-day visit with my family, and so if I look tired, that's because I am tired. I wanted to give you a brief overview of this week's readings for the course. The first reading is the Gordon Lathrop reading, which begins with the Bible, as the first sentence says. And I want to say begin with the Bible, but don't stop there. When we think of the Eucharistic celebration, we really do have to look at the biblical roots, but to stay there is not good enough. The Eucharist is, after all, a living reality. It is always completely contemporary. So anything less than that will render the Eucharist at worst as nostalgic and maybe at best just as antiquarian. So in the course of this reading, ask yourself the question, how do we understand the Eucharist as both deeply rooted in history and tradition and also a living event that welcomes people to enter? The next reading is Scott, and I chose this because it's a very traditional take on the Anglican use of the Eucharist. And please note that this is written by a Church of England writer, so it's really thinking of Anglicanism versus Episcopalianism. This article is also written in the context of a dialogue with Roman Catholics. It's also noteworthy that it's published in 1976, and so everything that's being considered is 2 generations old, and it refers to the English Book of Common Prayer. So bear in mind that it's dealing with a different set of assumptions than we normally have to take into consideration. It does, however, bring up some basic questions that you yourself, or certainly people in your congregations, have undoubtedly asked, questions about the sacrifice of the Eucharist, or the idea of real presence in the Eucharist, or the question of transubstantiation. And finally, it points out in a very helpful way, I think, that there's no real consensus about the meaning of the Eucharist in the Anglican or Episcopal contexts. So think of this as a kind of historical document that's a couple of generations old. The third reading this week is Rick Fabian's 2013 article. He is, as you probably know, one of the co-founders of my church, St. Gregory of Nyssa. So Rick's perspective on the Eucharist is quite different from that which many churches take, and is, I believe, also well worth considering. The underlying thesis that he wants to make or address is about the practice of open invitation to the Eucharistic table. Now, please note two things. He gives a biblical explanation for this particular Eucharistic practice, and he also does quite a lot of Bible study and uses some Hebrew phrases that you may or may not be familiar with. He uses the phrase halakha, which is a theological reflection, chesed, which is strong, steadfast love, tzedakah, which is working for restorative justice, and chaburut, which is a dinner for conversation with friends, or you might have heard it called a feast of friends. And again, please note that he is offering a biblical explanation for Eucharistic celebration. So I'm going to be with you all this coming Saturday from sometime in the morning until sometime in the afternoon. I'm actually going to bring some video to show. We're going to be dealing with some different case studies that I hope that you will be thinking about in the coming week. And also, I have as many lecture notes prepared as you can, choke a horse with, but I'd actually be much more interested in your questions. So please come prepared for a sort of dialogue where we can have conversation about what your curiosities are about the sacraments, and I can reflect with you on those. And then if we run out of stuff to talk about, we can perhaps enact a Eucharistic liturgy ourselves. I think that's about it for the week. I've got my down jacket already, and I hope that it's not as cold where you are as it could be. Anyway, wishing you a great deal of peace and light in the coming week, and I'll see you on Saturday. Take care.